So Elise, you're back at the place you told me about 3 years ago that you fell in love with. Talk us through the decision to return to Södermalm and Hammarby.
Yeah, it was really tough to leave back in 2018. It kind of broke my heart a little bit. But I needed to chase an environment that would allow me to play at the top level, and unfortunately that season Hammarby went down. And I'd stayed in contact with the club, with Johan, throughout those years, and had been really encouraging watching Hammarby, waiting for the moment that they'd come back up into the Damallsvenskan. And that moment finally arrived this season, and here I am, able to join the club again, so I'm super happy about that.
Is there any old teammates in particular that you have had contact with since that time?
Loose contact, so we haven't really stayed in tight contact, but I mean there's a handful of players that are still here, and it's great to be back playing with them again, seeing how much they've progressed. I think they've turned into great, fantastic players now, so that's really exciting to see, and just shows you how much hard work that the club's put in those 2 years. Before
returning to Damallsvenskan last year in Kristianstad, you tell us about what you've been up to before that time.
A lot of travel. So I left Hammarby in 2018 and I returned to play in Australia in the W League with Melbourne. And then from Melbourne moved to the west coast of America and played with the Rain. And then moved to Washington Spirit, so the east coast of America. From there moved back to Australia and played at my home club, Brisbane. Was feeling very homesick by that point. So it was a great moment for me to go and spend 4 months with my family. And then from Brisbane moved to Kristianstad, hoping to get some games pre-Olympics. Olympics were cancelled, the pandemic happened. I'm still here in Sweden. It's been 15 months. And I've finally been able to move back to Hammarby and sign on a longer term deal.
And like you said, you went to Kristianstad, and it was not long into the season that you had a very tough injury in the second game. Would you tell us about what happened?
Yeah, it was a strange time last year, as everyone would have experienced, but especially for myself. I moved to Sweden just as the pandemic was happening. It wasn't classified as a pandemic at that point, but I'd been in contact with the club because Australia were putting out warnings the day that I was flying saying, do not leave the country. And I was faced with a decision where I was actually packing up my whole life and moving to Europe. So, but Kristianstad reassured me that the league was still going ahead, games were still scheduled. Sweden hadn't acknowledged that it was a pandemic yet. And then literally the day that I arrived, the league was cancelled. So it was really unfortunate, and we had no clear direction about what was happening when the league would start again. But and I was only there on a 3-month deal. I was only meant to be there short term. But then things kind of got a bit crazy. Olympics were postponed, and we were going through a bit of an unusual training period as well, because we were told 4 weeks in advance that the league would start, and then it was cancelled, and then oh no, we'll start up again in 4 weeks, and it was a really unusual training regime. And I mean, I never like to say things cause injuries, but maybe that had something to do with it. And there were so many ACLs last season as well. It was just a really unusual time for women's football, football in general, to be honest. And unfortunately, in the second game of the season, I was one of those players to suffer an ACL injury. And because of the pandemic, I couldn't go home to get surgery. There were no surgeries at that time, unless they were life-threatening, urgent surgeries. Australia wasn't operating. So in order for me to get the operation...
It's lunchtime, I guess.
So yeah, I was talking about getting surgery. So I wasn't able to go home to Australia to get the operation. Just wasn't an option with the pandemic, and we were in full lockdown. So it's decided to stay here and do the rehab. And I did have the intention to go home at some point, because it was important for me, like for my mental wellness. I mean, to be away from home for so long and have such a serious injury. But I've just not had the opportunity because of the travel restrictions and the timelines. So I'm still here, and I've gone through the whole process in Sweden, and luckily, thankfully, Hammarby have been really supportive through the process and have taken me in and are helping with the last steps of the rehab, and we'll have a couple of good seasons together after this.
Yeah, what's your physical status like today?
Good, I feel good. I'm 10 months post-operation now, so there's no definite timeline for the ACL. Most people take around 12 months, but for me, when I had the surgery in August, my initial goal was to be back for the Olympics. I was just adamant. I was like, I'm going to do this. It's 11 months away. It's realistic. But as I've gone on, everyone has hiccups. There's usually little obstacles you have to overcome. I had a bad calf injury just before I moved here with Kristianstad, and that took me a good 8 weeks to recover from, and which was a pretty painful process because I was watching the days tick over and I'm thinking I want to be back on the field as soon as I can. But now I'm in a really good spot. Hammarby have sorted the calf out. We've integrated me into team training, and the last part will be to be in full contact, get some good sessions under my belt, and then I can hopefully put my hand up and say I'm ready.
Yesterday it was official that you're back with the national team, with the Matildas. What was the feeling like getting the message from Tony Gustafsson?
I think I don't know, it warms my heart a little bit. Like, I've been through such a hard 11 months. So for me, it just makes it all feel worthwhile. It would have been easy for me to just throw in the towel and say, I don't want to play football, I want to go home, I want to be comfortable, but I've stuck it out. I've stayed in an environment that will allow me to be back playing as a professional footballer. And I think this is a nice reward for that. And it'll be nice to see my Australians again. It's been over 15 months. I haven't seen anyone. It's a long time to be away from the team. So for me to just be able to integrate with the team again, and I'm a part of our leadership group too as well. So I think having more experience around the team will hopefully be valuable for them.
And it's a pretty convenient tour you have coming up these next 2 weeks. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the world kind of gravitates around me a little bit. Isn't it nice? I mean, Tony, our coach, lives in Stockholm. I've moved to Stockholm. The team will potentially be around Stockholm, so it's it's kind of cool. But we'll be based in Sweden. A lot of our players are actually out of season now, so a lot play in England, France, a couple in Germany. So come mid-June, start of July, they actually won't have a training environment. So we think it's in the best interest of the team to stay together through those 5 weeks, and lucky for me it'll be in Sweden. Hopefully the girls appreciate that and Sweden keeps the sun around.
What do you think of, how's your hopes for the Olympic Games then? There's 25 names now, and you're 18 that's traveling to Tokyo. Yeah, what are your hopes of playing in Tokyo as well?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. I mean, when I initially had surgery in August, I was adamant that I would be back for these games. But of course, I've had obstacles to overcome in that time, which has slowed down the process. My main goal is to be back playing for Hammarby. I mean, the steps are to be in training, to play for your club, and then you think about your country. So that's the priority, and I have great people guiding me, great people with my interests at heart. So there's no pressure to push things faster. It'll just be simply see how the next 4 weeks unfold and what the team needs and where I'm at physically. But there's definitely no stress to push boundaries. It's just what's going to be in the interest of me long term, because I still want to play for a long time. I mean, re-injury is the last thing that we want, so it's all about getting me back fit and healthy on the field.
If you were to be elected for the Olympic Games, it's a pretty interesting group that you have, right?
Yes, it is certainly an interesting group. I mean, to have 3 powerhouses in the group, I certainly put my heart out to New Zealand. I'd be terrified if I was in their shoes. But it's interesting in the way that it's kind of connected. Like, in terms of Australia's strategy and coach selection, they couldn't have done it any better. We've got Tony Gustafsson, who's the coach of Australia, who is a Swedish guy, who was the assistant coach of America. So we've kind of got inside information in all of those aspects. So we should be really tactically prepared for the games. And then you've also got our trans-Tasman rivals, New Zealand, which we know like the back of our hand. Like, we've played them so many times. So in terms of knowing and being familiar with our opponents, it's going to be very interesting because it might turn into a very tactical game. But in terms of how to get through the group as well, like it's a strange tournament. There's only so many teams, and it turns out that 3 teams from a group can potentially go through. So I mean, there's good opportunities. You don't need to come top two. There is that third place option if things don't go your way. And I think we're fortunate in that we play New Zealand first as well. It's a nice opportunity for us to find our feet and to build into the tournament.
And if we go back to Hammarby, where we sit here at the Hammarby IP, tell us again how has the first time coming back here been?
It's great. Like, Hammarby feel like my family. I've played in a lot of clubs through my career, and it's difficult. Like, you feel like you're a commodity at times. You feel like you're brought into the club to do a job. You're a player, and that's all they want from you. They just want performances. Whereas I think Hammarby give you a little bit more. So they make you feel a part of the family, and that I really appreciate. So for me to perform, I need to feel like I'm a part of something. I'm cared for, I'm supported. I'm not just a player, I'm not just a commodity, and I think Hammarby do a really great job of that, and I'm really happy to be back.
How important was it to have a 3-year deal made here with Hammarby? Like you said, you've been to a lot of places around the world, a lot of clubs, like a one-year contract there, half-year deal there. How important was it to have like a longer period job contract time?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of benefits and positives from signing a longer term deal. I mean, for me, it comes down to the women's game. Often there aren't opportunities to sign long term. Most clubs aren't financially in a position to be able to sign a foreign player long term. It's usually just a snap grab type of thing where we can afford this for one season, we'll sign them. Whereas Hammarby have come with a strategy, a plan, a long term vision, and I admire that. I think it's fantastic for the game. So for me, it was really comforting to be able to do that, and with the vision that Hammarby have, I want to be on board with that. I want to build something at a club. I don't just want to be a snap decision where you can do a job for a season. I want to be able to be a core part of something that we're building towards, and for me that was a massive benefit. And on top of that, I mean, through your early 20s, half the benefit of being a female footballer, it's not for money, it's for the opportunity to travel and to see the world and to experience cultures. And I did that, and I did that extensively. But now that I'm 30, it's kind of like, okay, I probably need some stability. I need to start building something. I need to start feeling comfortable. And especially after a serious injury, you start to reflect a lot, and you realize that maybe stability is a great thing, and being able to really build towards something. And when Hammarby presented that opportunity, I was really grateful, and I wanted to be a part of it.
What do you make of the team's performances so far in Allsvenskan?
Yeah, to be honest, I hadn't watched a lot of them in the last 2 years. I'd been told how we were trying to play and the vision and what we were trying to achieve. And then when I saw it firsthand, when I was still with Kristianstad, we actually played in a friendly game pre-season. I was really impressed. I thought, wow, they're here to play. And it wasn't just the intensity and the aggression that the girls had, it was the actual style of play. Like, it was a very tactical game with a lot of principles that I like to play football with, and I could really relate to that. So for me, the way that we're trying to play the game and what we're trying to achieve, and the fact that we've got quite a young team, that Hammarby, they've identified a certain style of player that will fit the style that they want to play. I mean, they're great signs, and I've been really impressed so far.